Hey guys, it's TWE TV here. Just giving you guys another rundown of SMC smart money concepts. Some people call it institutional trading, and some even call it Wyckoff. If you want to go by textbook, it is considered Wyckoff. So I'm gonna break down what exactly we're looking for. So this is kind of a step-by-step strategy. So let's break it down. So what we have is a higher time frame demand. Right now, with that being said, it creates the first up push. Right, some people may look at this as an Elliott wave cycle, which is 100% true. But let's stick to Wyckoff a little bit. So what we have here is just some market structure, kind of what I look for. Notice what exactly, is the formation, right? I'm kind of looking for something along the lines of, back and forth transaction between supply and demand, right? Some people call it accumulation and distribution, right? So in this case, if I go ahead and mark out each one of these, minor zones and, another, higher time frame zone. So let's go ahead and just, label these as 15 minute, let's say it's bouncing off of it, just to kind of simplify things, kind of give you guys kind of the live reaction, what you're going to actually see in the market. Now, ideally, once I identify these 15-minute zones, POI, supply demand, whatever you want to call it, then I go ahead and kind of collect data, right? That's the biggest thing. You want to collect data. Now, what is the main point of collecting data? You want to look for who's in control, right? You want to see a constant battle between it. Why do you want to see that? Because that's clearly telling you that, the supply or demand in the situation is strong. So notice, I'm marking out 1 minute demands and 1 minute supplies. The demands seem to be having at least a strong reaction from what I can see, right? That's what you want to look for, right? And then you're looking for, in this case, you're seeing the 1 minute supply is actually failing, right? Now, if that's the case, why is that happening? Well, it's happening because it bounced off of the 15-minute demand and it's heading towards the 15-minute supply. Now, once it taps into the 15-minute supply, you're going to start seeing order flow. And that's ideally what you're going to be looking for. So whatever, higher time frame demand or supply that you run into, that's the kind of order flow that you're going to be running into most likely. That's going to be the case. Now, what are we looking for? Now, after we confirmed the 15-minute supply was mitigated, right? Now it's creating 15-minute order flow. So with this 15-minute supply order flow, now we have, a demand failing. That's the biggest thing. So you're constantly seeing that reaction and transaction between the order flows and, we're trying to figure out who's in control and how are we going to take an ideal entry. Granted, any one of those points where you saw a reaction on, from the 15-minute supply and it creates order flow could have been an entry. Definitely could have been an entry. Maybe not on the first or second one, maybe on the third one. Honestly, that kind of fits my entry model to a certain degree. Now, keep in mind, the main objective here was to look for a buying setup, right? Kind of like what I was referring to earlier. There's so many different entry models that you can develop. Now, what I always tell people is it's okay to have maybe 2 or 3 entry models, for a buy and then 2 or 3 for the sell, right? Now, in this case, this order flow here technically fits my entry model because all I'm really looking for is 15-minute POI reaction, right? And after I have that reaction, I want to see some sort of order flow. And once I have that some sort of order flow, I like to ideally look for the opposing supply or demand be liquidated. So in the one that I was showing in just a second here, it's a demand, right? But it failed. It was used as liquidity. So an entry model there could actually work. It could be profitable to take an entry there and then possibly ride it to maybe that section there on the little, reaction on that previous demand. Or, if you want to maybe ride it a little bit longer, maybe turn it into a swing trade, You can, even write a little bit lower. It all depends. What is your ideal, goal? What is your trading plan? What is your risk management plan? If that is something that you're okay with, like maybe that's your, I don't know, 1 to 5 that you're looking for, aiming for that little, 1 minute demand there. That could work for you. But if that's not the case, then maybe aim for the 15 minute. With all that being said, and this could have been definitely a sell setup. It is very true. You could have entered it there. I mean, I always say it's good to look for liquidity, right? Because how I'm looking at it, right, it sweeped that first and it looks like tapped the 1 minute zone and then it came back into that order flow to finally mitigate it, right? And now it's going to be using that 1 minute demand there as what? Liquidity, right? That's all internal liquidity. That's what it is. And that little bit right there, if you were to aim for that 15 minute, it created a little bit of extra liquidity. So it kicked out all the buyers and sellers to a certain degree, right? And now with all that being said, it created a little bit extra space just so it can sweep it. Then we get a reaction to that 15 minute. Well, now with that being said, this is the kind of setup that I look for. I want it to sweep a lot of internal liquidity, create a little bit extra, then sweep it, then tap into a 15 minute POI. If, I'm looking for an entry off of the 15 minute POI, hop down into 1 minute, look for a 1 minute supply and a reaction to it, then a sweep. If I get all that, then ideally I like to aim for the extreme of the 1 minute demand reaction there. And then I'm targeting mainly all of this order flow here because as demand and supply is constantly creating liquidity, it's going to constantly be sweeping liquidity. So it's a constant transaction between who's in control and who's going to be created and what's going to be swept. So now let's look on a live chart. All right, y'all. So here's a perfect example. It's hitting a 15 minute supply. So what is ideally, our setup going to be? We're going to be looking for sells, of course. Now, with that being said, what is the first thing we do after hit our higher time frame POI? We're going to start not back testing, but collecting data. All right. Now, remember, how do we collect data? We simply collect data by, marking out different 1 minute zones. In this situation here, I'm trading off of the 1 minute. At least that's where I want to ideally look for an entry. So in this situation here, I'm constantly marking out 1 minute demands. Now, while I'm constantly drawing these out, what am I looking for? I'm looking for a reaction off of these 1 minute demands to then show me the true supply. That's what you want to look for. You want to see that, in this case, if we're looking for sells, right? We're trying to look for a supply, quote unquote, right? There's extremes, midpoints, right? The extreme is going to be on the very top here, that whole little section that I just marked out there. Then the midpoints are going to be anywhere between, the reaction of these 1 minute demands. You want to see the market respect that zone, then sweep it. If you get something like that, then that should tell you right there that that zone is valid and there is more. So as we can see now, it's, created a little bit of its own little order flow here, but it didn't pull into, supply that we are ideally were looking for. What is that doing? It's creating liquidity, internal and external, both sides of the market, right? It created a little bit of order flow. That probably could have been quick little scalps. Definitely. But in this situation, we're looking for a big move. So I see that it sweeped it, right? And then after it sweeped it, right, sweeped the liquidity, or at least major liquidity, then it created a little bit more. Now, when it created a little bit more, I'm looking at it now as, oh man, it's creating space for the big move. Then it created this, this little section here. I mean, that's kind of afterwards. We kind of find that little bit of liquidity that I marked there, that equal low. I mean, it is possible to maybe take a trade off of it a little bit later. Like in this situation here, definitely use that as like, oh man, there's a little bit more liquidity here, and that's giving me a re-entry point, which that is another beautiful way to take an entry. Taking an entry off of any one of those 2 points is perfectly okay, Keep in mind as well, when you're marking out these zones, they can also be used as re-entry points, right? And not only as re-entry points, but possibly points where we could possibly take partials or a hard TP, right? In this overall situation, it looks like it worked out, at least for, this little 15-minute demand. That could have been targeted, and that probably could have been like a good 1 to 8, 1 to 10 possibly. The beautiful thing of all of this is that was an entry just off the midpoint there. There's so many different ways of, entering the market, because now we have a bit of an extreme here that looks like it reacted to it, right? And it had that little bit of liquidity. It swept a little bit of it, and then, it comes down into, let me just narrow this down a little bit more just to, give itself a, that's actually, showing that it's reacting to it. Because that's the thing, guys. I always tell people, when you're marking out POI zones, if you want to mark out like a little, like 2 or 3 candle little range, or if you want to just do a whole little 1 candlestick, it's up to you. But the more you narrow it down, the more likely, you're going to miss, the actual reaction, which in my case, I marked out the entire little group of candles there, and it tapped into it. And here's another example of a transaction between the supply and demand, and now you're taking trades off of the extremes, right? So what exactly am I getting at here? There's so many different re-entries on this. You can take entries off of the midpoint. I showed you that's the first part of it. And now there's entries off of the extremes, and that could be, your swing trade that you're looking for, or if you're an intraday trader, well, maybe taking trades off of the midpoint may have been, your ideal, setup, your ideal plan, and in this case, I'm looking for a swing. So aiming for another 15-minute demand. All right, y'all. I hope this was very beneficial to you. And if you need any more info, check my link in my bio. Stay profitable.